Hello, well with me today is the wonderful Liz Pichon, who has done the Tom Gates books. Is this your first, Liz?
It's the first one,
That's the first one, The Brilliant World of Tom Gates. And if I look inside it, I think, have you signed it? Yes, you've signed it. There you go, look, you've signed it.
That's a really old copy. I think that's the first one ever.
It is.
Yeah.
This is worth billions.
At least 20p.
Yes. Liz, it's wonderful you come on my YouTube channel.
I'm excited to be here, thank you.
So we're going to talk about Tom Gates,
Yep.
how you write it, how you make it, what ideas that you can give to children and young people about how to write, how to draw, all that sort of thing.
Okay.
All right. So first of all, let's start with the character. I mean, how did you think up Tom Gates? I'm just making a little observation here. Mm-hmm. You're not actually somebody called Tom.
No.
And you're not actually a boy
No.
or male. So it's a big jump. You're a grown-up woman and you had to think of a little boy character. How did you do that?
I was a child.
Were you?
I was a child. Yeah, and actually, I was an illustrator. So I've never written any books for older children before, but I had illustrated other people's stories. So Tom Gates actually started off as a picture book, and it went through several stages. So I did, when children first go to school, and they quite often do All About Me. So I got younger children, they'd gone into school and, they'll do about their teachers, about their pets, about their family. So I did a picture book based on that kind of thing, and I wanted to have lots of scraps and lots of different fonts, different things, imagining that children were cutting them out and sticking them in a book. That was the first Tom Gates book. I gave that to my agent and she took it around, and lots of people said they really liked it, but they said there wasn't enough of a story. So actually it morphed, I had to rewrite it about 2 or 3 times, and then eventually I sat down, and by that stage as well I'd worked out the characters, I'd done some drawings and thought about the family, and then eventually, here we go, I brought this along because you asked me to bring something. So this is the first exercise book that I imagined that Tom as a character would be writing in. And I don't know about you, Michael, but I used to draw on my pencil case. I used to do little doodles. So I imagined that Tom himself was actually writing in the book and writing a story. So, and adding all those little drawings and doodles as well. And because I used to do picture books, I loved the fact that you had those page-turning moments. And in picture books, you use the pictures and the fonts and all those things to tell a story. And I really wanted to do the same for Tom Gates as well. So I got to this bit.
So let me just say, so in this side, what have we got there? What have you drawn there?
Well, actually, this is one of the things that didn't end up being in the original book, because I used little stick men, but this is supposed to be Tom drawing out his classroom. So imagining that he was very relaxed and happy at the back of the classroom, with his feet up and being quite far away from the teacher, and then the horror of Mr. Fullerman moving him to the front of the class.
So this is you pretending to be Tom Gates drawing.
Yes.
Because it's not you drawing, it's Tom Gates drawing.
It was. But but actually that ended up changing. So instead of using stick men, because we just didn't think I didn't think it was interesting enough in a way. And so this is Mr. Fullerman writing with the different fonts.
So he's typed out because he's
Yes.
an adult, so he's typed out.
I think that's supposed to be a letter from Mr. Fullerman. So
and then what have we got here?
And those are Tom's imagining that he's in a band, which he is in a band, and he's trying to work out what they're going to be called. So he was thinking about calling it the Bad Bunnies, the Foot Fighters, and actually I did originally have the band called Zombie Dogs. But when you're writing for children, you also have to do little checks. So I had to check that there wasn't a band called Zombie Dogs, and they do actually exist. They did when I wrote this. So now they're called Dog Zombies.
And what's going on there? What's that?
That's alien twins. So I was just trying to think of, random things that a band could be called, and doing little doodles as well. And then I imagined that as what happens, that children quite often get asked, what have you done in your summer holidays? And you had to write about what you've done. So Tom had been camping, so he wrote a story called Camping Sucks, and it all went terribly wrong. And that was really the first time I kind of got the voice for it. So that's all.
When you said that, get the voice, what do you mean by that?
Well, I started writing, it became a bit easier because I kept thinking, well, I know the character a little bit, because I was imagining that I'm basically Tom. And a lot of what Tom in the stories are actually based on things that happened to me as a kid as well. So I've never been a big fan of camping. So you kind of thought, well, if you went camping, what are the kind of things that could go wrong?
So
that's
you
what he
imagine
did.
yourself, in your case, back into situations that happened.
Yes.
And then you find a way of writing about them in the voice of somebody who's actually somebody else.
Yes.
This Tom Gates person.
Yeah, and also including the doodles and the drawings as well to help to tell the story. So that's my sort of illustrator background. I did one page, I think we've got there, where they pitched a tent and it was very obviously in the wrong place. And here we go. Nope, maybe I've added that drawing in. But yeah, obviously, they pitch a tent, it's in the wrong place, and things like, I've got the word snoring there. So you make that very big.
In great big letters.
Great big letters.
So he's quite inventive with his lettering, fonts, as you say. And also, look, you've got there, what does that say? This bit down the bottom there. We'll show that to the camera there.
How high up I was until I fell down. So obviously I wanted to make the letters go all the way down.
Go full down.
Yeah.
So you can use the letters to tell the story as well as the words in a way.
Yeah. It's something, I loved that in picture books. And quite often children for slightly older children, the books that I was seeing at the time, they didn't have as many things like that included in it. There were lots of just maybe an illustration and text, an illustration and text. So for me, it seemed like a really good way to help to tell the story.
Yeah, have it all in together.
Yeah, and I was a massive fan of comics when I was younger as well. And so that was something else that, I loved about comics, the visual aspect of it. And the great thing about picture books as well is that quite often the illustrations will help you tell part of the story that isn't in the text. So that's another way. That's something else that I was quite keen to do.
Can I ask you...
So that was the original one. There you go. And we've got things like, actually, I'll show you, like that. So I've got the original book here.
Okay, we can compare the two.
You can compare the two. And most of it actually did end up... There you are, look.
So I'll hold that one up. There you go. So this is your notebook, and this is the finished book.
Yeah.
Can we see that? Yeah.
So there are lots of things that are in my first draft that have actually ended up being in here as well, like camping sucks, like the very first page. There we go. That looks pretty much the same.
Yes, yeah. And how much did this notebook cost you, Liz? It looks very, very expensive.
It's very expensive, at least 50p, and I haven't looked after it very well.
No, you've torn it. Yes, that's a little bit of a shame. Yeah, so this is the original. Yeah. I'm holding in my hand the original Tom Gates manuscript.
Yeah, and I photocopied that, added a few extra drawings in, and that's what went off to the publishers.
Yes.
So I've had a lot of people say they can't believe that I've done all those books just based on that.
But you have.
But I have, yeah. So that's
Can
how
I
it
ask you
started.
something about deciding that you were going to write it as a book in the first person with I? So you didn't do Tom Gates, he, you did Tom Gates, I am Tom Gates. Now, sometimes when I'm writing, I can't make up my mind whether to be I or whether to do he and she. How did you decide Tom was going to be an I book?
I think it's because when I started doing the picture book, because I started all about me, so that had started to get the voice already, about him talking about his pets, about his teachers, sticking things in. So I'd already started to get the voice of that, and that felt like it was quite natural as well. So it felt like a better way to tell a story. And it just kept going like that because, I'd never written anything more than a picture book before. So that seemed to be working.
And do you map out a story before you start? Because sometimes children in schools, they're asked to do a sort of story map, beginning, middle and end thing, and then to write. Now, what do you do?
Well, I think, there isn't, there's not a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Everyone has their own way of doing it, but you can give people ideas and tips. You can give the children, things that help me. So one of the things that happened is, after I'd done this book and I'd just done the first part of it, suddenly I got asked to write 3 whole books. And I'd never written anything more than a picture book before. So I had to suddenly find a way to get all those ideas and try and work them out and what I was going to do. So the thing that I did, and what I do with all the books, So I brought with me today.
Bring that up so we can see it.
So this is from Biscuits and Bags.
If you lift it up and we can all see it, yeah.
So what I tend to do, is really helpful for me, is I will just think of individual ideas. So I won't even think about the whole story.
So when you say ideas, do you mean like a moment? A moment in Tom Gates's life?
Literally anything. It could be something as simple as a haircut. Or,
Tom Gates goes to the hairdresser.
Yeah. Tom Gates goes to the hairdresser. Or Tom Gates, they have a supply teacher. Or he's got to, they've got a special healthy eating campaign in school. Or going on holiday. So when I'm thinking about what I'm going to do, first of all, I never think about the whole thing. I just do individual ideas. And it could be sparked off by anything. So for Biscuits Bands, I started off doing, the Brilliant Bands doing a cover idea. And I'll say, what's inside? Headings, drawings made up of album covers, how to doodle different things, family members, class members, teachers as well, story. So Tom's in a choir. There you go, there's a little bit of story there.
What does that say under there?
Tom gets roped into being the school choir, performing and singing a dance routine.
So we've got a whole storyline of whether Tom's, and then you're thinking maybe Tom's not going to succeed, Tom's going to maybe fail.
Exactly.
And then,
what would happen? And band practice, running joke. Norman brings his little brother, so they have to keep him busy. So actually, this is probably maybe not the best one to show you because Biscuits Bands had things to do in the book.
That's fine.
As well.
Now, why have you got arrows between the squares?
I've drawn those because it's just a thread, so it helps me work out where it's going to go. So rather than just having, like an individual thing, so I've got that, and then what's inside, so I bring it down that way, and then I'll bring it down that way. It's just a way of putting together a lot of my kind of random thoughts. So
when we use a word like storyline,
yeah,
that in a way is your storyline.
It is.
Because the arrows are like the line, aren't they?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. So when I'm starting off, I don't think about everything as a whole. I will literally just get a notebook, very thin paper. I use like a layout paper pad. There's something about having a notebook sometimes that feels a bit precious. So if I'm just getting my first ideas, I'll just use very thin paper and I will literally write anything down, anything that comes into my head randomly, and just not worry about what order it is or anything. And if I start to think that there's something coming up, that's when I'll go to the next stage and put it into some kind of an order. But I think, sometimes it's like when you've got a plain piece of paper, especially for kids, I don't know what you were like, but if somebody gave me a plain sheet of white paper and you go like, okay, write something. It's like, tell me a joke, Your head goes, you go, oh. So a good way to free that up is just to not, to try not to worry about it and just to try and get anything that could have happened to you today.
And then you could join it. So in each time you could do it either as a bubble or as a square, and then you could join it up on the piece of paper, and then that will give you that line. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
So we were having a quick conversation before when I was saying that my thoughts, because I think very visually and I think about the pictures and what it's going to look like, sometimes they get very jumbled. So I have to get them out of my head, and a way of doing that is just to get it out and write it onto a note paper. And then maybe I might do a drawing as well. So I might do a little sketch or something.
That's all on this first sheet, isn't it? Yeah, as you said, yeah.
And then do you...
Go on then, yes, please do, yeah.
You can't shut me up now.
No, that's what we want. So that was
actually, that's probably a better one. This is What Monster. So, and I've put a bit of colour on this, but that'll give you an idea. So What Monster? So Oakfield School Play. So that's what I started off with, that they were going to have a play. So this year's Jack and the Giant Beanstalk with friends. Mrs. Worthington wanted everyone to have a part. Even the beanstalk is being played by the kids, and I don't know how. So there you are. Then I did a little drawing of that's Marcus.
And you've got speech bubbles as well, haven't you?
A beanstalk. Yeah. So, and also Oakfield Gazette. So running through the whole of What Monster, these captions that are going to be like, newspaper headlines as well. What other bits of story are there? There's a rumour going around that the supply teacher who's going to be covering for Mr. Fullerman, who's away, and no one knows why. It's a mystery. Chinese whispers. So I've got, how things can happen in school when they have a Chinese whisper, and by the time it gets to the end, it's completely different. And the mystery in this, there's a little dog. So the supply teacher brings in a dog who is going around eating the sausage rolls in school.
So the dog is there and there and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
running away from
One thing about this looks to my eyes very beautiful
Yeah.
and very brilliant. If I was doing this, right, it would look quite messy. Does that matter?
No, not at all. I mean, you know, if you look at it, it's full of spelling mistakes. I mean, it might look, you know, fancy as a whole page, but actually the individual things are just very, you know, they're just like little individual ideas, really. And this is what I do to show my editor what I'm going to be doing. So it's a really useful thing to have when I'm writing the books, because I can refer back to it. So there might be plot lines that I'll forget.
What's this one that looks like snow or something? What's that?
Do a Where's Wally detailed spread so you can spot Mum and Dad and find Mr. Fullerman too. So
this is Tom Gates is going to do a Where's Wally thing.
Yes. So I did that. Do you want to see that?
Yeah, let's see what happens. So it's lovely you've got a character who draws. You could have a character who sings or a character who dances, and that could be, Oh, right. So this is Tom Gates's picture. Is Tom in this?
It's not actually Tom. He didn't draw that. This is just a scene.
Yes.
Something. So, I mean, I did worry about swapping between what Tom draws and what real life, and then it got so complicated that I don't worry about it anymore. No. So Tom is in there at some point.
Yes. Don't give it away.
Don't give it away.
I see. And when you're doing that, I don't want to call it something like, doodling. Let's call it doodling.
It's doodling. It's fine. It is doodling.
It is doodling. So when you're doing that doodling, do you sometimes steal an idea from something maybe you're watching on telly or a song line or something like that?
I'm always on the listen and look out all the time. In fact, when I was at school, I had my teacher for 5 years in secondary school. I discovered very early on that he didn't partake in popular culture at all. So he didn't have a telly. He never went to the cinema, never saw films, anything like that. So quite a lot of my English projects, this is a very Tom Gates thing. I started pinching storylines from EastEnders and...
For your school essays?
For my school essays, thinking, well, that's a good storyline, put that in. And then I got a bit sort of brazen. And one of the stories I wrote was basically the plot line for Jaws, because I knew he'd never have seen it.
The movie?
The movie.
Chung, 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 yeah.
And sure enough, he was very impressed with my amazing story and wanted me to go and show it to everybody. So I had to persuade him that actually this wasn't a very good, honestly, sir, there's no need. I don't need to do that. So I do take things,
And what I'm saying is that's okay. So if a child, let's say, they're watching EastEnders or they're watching something on the telly, Game of Thrones, doesn't matter what, think, and you can take it and change it around a bit, put your own character into it, or take a character out of a film and put them into your story, maybe changed a bit, change the name or something. We can do that, can't we?
I think, especially when you're first starting out, nobody does something that's, original in the beginning. And that's how you learn. I mean, that's how I learned how to do drawings. I used to copy from comics. I was mad about Walt Disney. And so I learned how to draw by copying things. And I think if you're reading books that you are really enjoying and you think to yourself, I love that book, or I love the way they tell the story, I don't think there's any harm in, thinking, well, I'm going to tell a story in a similar way, because that's how you learn.
Yeah, so imitation is fine, that's what we're saying.
It depends if you're still doing it like now.
Who knows?
We all do a bit of it, don't we?
Yeah, of course. What do you want, when someone's reading Tom Gates, what would you like your readers to think of him? Do you want, what would you like their view of his character to be? What do you think?
Well, I think when I started writing it, I wanted to write a character that liked all the same sort of things that I liked, that was very enthusiastic, that loved drawing and doodling, but didn't necessarily always get things right. And there's not a lot of nastiness in the books at all. I like to think there's everybody gets on, even though Marcus Meldrew is annoying. Tom, they're not mean to each other. So there's that level of, and I just wanted them to be funny,
But do you want people to be sorry for Tom?
No.
No?
A little bit of empathy. You can see when things are going to go wrong.
Yes.
But I want them to, a lot of children actually see themselves in the books.
Yes.
And
so if I'm reading the book, let's imagine I'm 9.
Yeah.
And reading the book, Would it be good if I was reading it and I went, oh yeah, I'm a bit like that?
Yeah, yes, I think so. They can recognise the relationships that they have with their siblings, with their family. I mean, not everything's exactly the same, but I think being able to identify with some of the things that happen in schools. I mean, I deliberately don't put very much, I don't write about technology, or I like writing about the details. I like writing about the small things that happen.
And that's good for children to do, isn't it? Because your world is surrounded by all these things, and you're saying you could include anything. If my glasses here fell off and broke, that could be a Tom Gates thing, just something as simple as that.
Yeah.
The day I trod on my glasses.
Everyone's got funny stories.
Yes,
Yeah.
And so you can use anything from that day, that hour, that last hour, school dinners.
Yes.
Somebody fell in the slot pot, or whatever.
Even coming up today on the tube, I was sitting on the tube and there's a little girl in front of me. She's really little, got a backpack on. She is very carefully eating her Rice Krispie thing. She's obviously savouring every mouthful.
Yes.
And her mum's looking at her, watching her. And then she's nibbling it very slowly and I was watching her. And then she got to a point where she looked up at her mum and then she just shoved the whole of it in. And she did it so quickly that actually a big chunk of it dropped onto the floor. And then there was this standoff because I was watching her, she was going looking at it, and I was thinking, I know what she's going to do. She is desperate to pick that bit up and eat it. So I was waiting to see how long it would be before and what she was going to do. And she was very smart. She waited until the doors opened and there was a bit of kerfuffle going on. She slid off that chair, reached down, had got it up to her mouth. And when her mum suddenly leant in and went, oh, horrified. But it was a whole little story. It was a little story that I was watching and I was thinking, that's really funny. And, all of us have done that at some point. And you've had something that you're desperate to eat and then, it drops or...
It's perfect, and you could write it, but also there'd be little drawings like of the hand going down.
You
I can just see
the
it.
eyes like going down.
Yes.
The thought bubbles, when's a good time?
Yes.
The mother going, I can see it. What's she doing?
Yes.
So it's like building up the
tension. And then the big hand coming in going, oh no you don't. Yes. Well, you could even write oh no you don't on the hand, couldn't you? Oh no you don't.
In real life, what might happen is she'd just be able to get it and then somebody would come and tread on it.
Oh yes, that would ruin it. Yes, that's right. So even a little thing like that, and you've got your character, that can happen in the story. So you can just look around, see things going on, and put those in your story.
Yes.
And when you're mapping it out, it could go on your big sheet, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think I would say to children, don't be frightened of just putting down anything. The small, even things that you don't think might work in the story, because that's something else that happens a lot. You put lots of things down and not everything is going to go in.
Yeah.
But just jot things down randomly, things that you might have done that day. Just it could be going to buy some new school shoes.
Yes.
Everyone's got a story about that.
Yeah. I'm immediately thinking of mine. Yes,
exactly.
And you could write a child could write it wouldn't necessarily be a Tom Gates story. They could create another character and then sort of follow your style of doing things by calling their character somebody else, Mary Gates or whoever.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And even if you don't want to add drawings to it, just using the different fonts that's what I do with the drawings. I'm just using them to help to tell the story. So you don't have to cram in lots of drawings if you don't think it's necessary. But if you think it will help tell the story, then add a drawing in. You might have a character who's not saying anything, but is thinking something.
And how about the idea that you could take your sort of Tom Gates type way of doing things and send your character, let's call her Mary Gates for the moment, and you send her off into the future.
Yes.
Go to the moon.
Okay.
Or go into the past. Go to time of Henry VIII.
Yeah.
That would be all right as well, wouldn't it?
It would be.
You could do like a sort of fantasy Mary Gates figure who's wandering around the court with Henry VIII and seeing the Queen's heads being chopped off.
There's a lot of drawing involved in that.
Oh, right. Well, it wouldn't have
There's
to
a lot
be.
of costumes.
No.
Immediately I'm thinking, oh, that's a lot of continuity.
No.
That's with my illustrator head on.
Yeah. No, you could write a little line and then it's just an axe.
It's just an axe, yeah.
Yeah, a bit horrible histories or horrible
Exactly.
future.
Well, that's what I think is really interesting about
Little
that.
aliens popping up on the moon and Mary Gates going around the moon. You could do that, couldn't you?
You could.
Yeah.
And what would be funny is if when they went to the moon, the same kind of things that would happen in the classroom would happen there. And that's what would be, that would make it funny,
that's
wouldn't
right.
it? You can imagine aliens just going, oh, God, this maths lesson's
Really?
taking a long time, isn't it?
Yeah. And also trying to buy new shoes on the moon, that would be quite difficult.
Yes,
but
exactly.
anything could be.
And, yeah.
Yeah, picking up stuff. I'm thinking of the little chocolate bar, but eating the moon.
And the thinking, oh.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a big blank piece of paper here.
All right.
Are you going to do something on the big blank piece of
What do you
paper
want
for
me
us?
to do?
Anything you like.
Oh dear.
Where do you start? I've sometimes seen you when you're doing a show with children. I think we were on the same platform, so on,
Yes.
and you do things on on a blank piece of paper.
Well, okay. Yeah, I do. Well, a lot of children said, how do I start doing how did I get the character? And so just drawing. I kept on drawing. And why did I draw, Tom as a boy? And because I kept doing this character like that. And for some reason, I just kept drawing it over and over again. So that's Tom. You're suitably unimpressed. I told you my life drawing is a bit.
What do you mean unimpressed? I'm massively impressed. I can't draw anything. I can draw around my hand, and that's about it.
So yeah, so that was Tom. I'll draw a
That
dog.
looks like Tom as a spaceman.
It is. That's his little sort of logo. Well, when you're a kid, you quite often do little logos and things, don't you? And dog zombies, yeah. So I never used to draw like this before. So I only started drawing like this for Tom as the character, and I've been doing it for so long now that I've actually kind of.
Why do you do these funny double lines with the black bits in?
It just started off. That's his little. See, I hope this is inspiring children to see that you don't have to be that good.
But it's lovely, it's nice and simple, and I see you've got what's called a confident line.
Confident line.
So with a confident line, you don't hesitate, you just draw the line, even if it's a bit wobbly.
Well, the thing is, this style of drawing, the stars and things, like when you've got a bit of moment, like on your pencil case or something, I used to do little doodles. This sort of drawing goes on lots of things. And the actual drawing in the books is something that the children really enjoy doing and making up their own characters. And I think for a lot of children, they're quite worried about doing drawing or making mistakes. Kids really worry about making mistakes and making things wrong. And I always say there's no wrong way to doodle, so you don't have to worry about that. There you go. That's a really wobbly Tom Gates. And Delia never has a mouth either, and I don't know why. Delia, the teenage sister.
I've just glanced, while you were doing that, I glanced down at your shoes.
When you said lovely, you have to do it with a bit more enthusiasm.
Okay, well, sorry, I'm a bit like that. But,
yeah, lovely.
I glanced down at your shoes. I wonder if you could show people your Tom Gates shoes. Let's make sure the camera sees that. That's outrageous.
Well, do you know why I started drawing on my shoes? Because I loved drawing on and making things. That's one of the things I loved doing when I was a kid. And I said, comics and making things and making badges. And when I started going into schools, all the kids are sitting on the floor. And so I'd already sort of drawn on my nails. I have done a few drawings there for you today as well.
Oh, right. Do show the camera that so we can see the nails. Hold it there nice and still. Yes. Yeah.
So I started doing this because it's something that I did when I was a kid, like drawing on things. And because the kids are all sitting on the floor, I thought, I'm going to draw on my shoes. And when I walk past, they'll all go, oh. And I love the fact as well that the books are about stories, about writing, about drawing, about doing creative things. And the kids will look at the style that I do and they think, oh, I can copy that, or I can do that. Because, that's exactly the kind of thing that I used to love doing. You get a story and you get inspired to maybe write some poetry. Because I'm writing song lyrics. Tom's in a band, so I made up songs that have been in the books right from the very beginning. And that's what I used to like doing.
Well, write us one little bit of something just in here so that we've got a nice, so we can see Tom Gates. Anything at all you can write.
Oh, okay.
Anything at all about what Tom's thinking or what.
Oh,
yes.
okay. Well, hang on. About what's. Well, actually, I do these bugs quite a lot as well, which are a bit. And then I'll write something as well. Hang on. Yeah, this is not exactly what you asked me to do, but hang on.
That's all right. You don't have to do what I ask you to do.
And this is his grumpy sister, I don't know, where did you come in the pecking order then?
Me?
Yes. What, you oldest?
What, in my family,
Yeah.
I'm a younger child. I've got an older brother.
Oh.
Yes. What about you?
Oh, I'm the youngest.
Yes.
My eldest sister is 16 years older than me. So, can you probably not see it now? Yeah. So, I remember being the youngest and what it was like being the youngest, and still do. And it doesn't matter how old your brothers, you'll always be the youngest, and they'll always treat you like that a bit.
Is that a sort of...
That's a little cloud, yeah, that was...
Is that a thinks bubble?
It's just a gloomy cloud that is over Delia.
Delia is, yes.
And
So you don't even have to think words sometimes. You can just say, she's gloomy, and then you make a gloomy cloud. Yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's what she'd say. Probably.
Lovely. Was the bug thinking something?
And the bug's thinking, snacks.
Snacks. Want something to eat?
Yeah, because
Lovely.
do you remember when you were a kid, I used to have quite a long journey back home, and on my journey back, I would constantly be thinking about what I was going to eat when I got home.
Yes.
The thought about, what are you going to eat? Snacks are really, and food play a big part in your childhood, I think. And deciding what to eat.
Yes. Well, so that's another simple thing that you could put in, just thinking
Yes.
about the foods that you're going to eat and
how you eat them, and like the caramel wafer trick that I do with the kids. So we
Yes.
have the caramel wafer, and then you unwrap it and eat it, and then you put the plain one on the plate, and then you give it to the unsuspecting person who finds it's empty. So that's something I used to do as a kid, and that's in the books now, and all the kids are doing it.
the caramel wafer trick.
Yes. I also get ideas sometimes, because children write to me. I'm sure they write to you as well, but they often write to me and send me things in. So I quite often get ideas, and this one's from Lottie. So she sent me this little book that she made, which I just thought was absolutely genius. It's made out of one piece of paper, so she's actually written her own little book there, all illustrated. And it's actually made out of just one piece of paper. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
That's clever, isn't it? That's really clever.
So how's she done that? So
Well, she's
there's...
cut it in the middle, and then you fold it. So you fold it in half. Because of the cut that you make in the middle, that means that when you fold it in half and then fold it down again, like that, I think. There you go. Oh, actually, no, I've done it the wrong way. Yeah, look. There we are.
And tell us just a little bit about what the story is. What does it say at the beginning?
It says, I think you're one of the best authors ever.
That's nice, yeah.
So it's just lots of questions, really. This is a picture. I love the picture of your dad snoring in one of the books. So she's just drawn illustrated. So she's written a letter to me, but she's actually turned it into a little book, which I thought was very ingenious. I actually probably will, I might, if that's okay with you, Lottie, I might actually use that somewhere.
Yes, because you could, in fact, make letters. You can make a book out of letters as well, can't you?
Yes.
So it could be like a Tom Gates type book where it's Tom Gates' letters.
You absolutely could. And in fact, when you're talking about when I do events with the children in schools, one of the things to do, I get them to do a drawing, but I get them to do it on a A4 plain piece of paper, and we fold it in half. And I say to them, that's how I make the books. So what they're doing there is exactly how I make the books. So just writing with a pencil on the piece of paper and folding it in half, and then you've got the beginning of a book. So that's great, though, isn't it?
Lovely.
Thank you. Thanks, Lottie.
Well, on that note, we will end this wonderful chat. We've been listening to Liz Pichon and talking about the wonderful Tom Gates books and how to make your own Tom Gates type book. So I hope you'll do that. Thanks very much, Liz. Thank you.
All right.
There we go.
I was really tempted to go like that then.
Yeah, I bet you were. Go on then, we'll do it again then. Go on, we'll do it. Thanks very much, Liz.